Hello, everyone. Today I want to go back to 1955 and discuss a movie that's near and dear to my heart. And this is Rebel Without a Cause, that starred James Dean, Natalie Wood, Sal Mineo, directed by Nicholas Ray. Warner Brothers has released this on 4K UHD. It was previously a Blu-ray release of theirs, which is included in this release. I think this is also part of the Warner Brothers 100-year set. And Rebel Without a Cause is very much a mythical movie. It's a movie about myths. It's a Greek tragedy. It certainly has the unity of a 24-hour time frame. We go from nighttime to the following night. The movie ends at the dawn. But it's also a movie that is about parents and children, very much theme of Greek tragedies, how children feel betrayed by their parents, and how disappointed they are in them, in the tragic developments that come from these kind of tortured relationships. Another mythological element is certainly that of James Dean, who only made 3 films, and you see him in his red jacket, which is very famous, his charisma, but also his tragic death. He only made 3 films in which he was the star. Rebel Without a Cause came out, was released only a couple weeks after James Dean had died, and he had made one more film in the meantime, Giant, and previous to Rebel, he had made East of Eden with Elia Kazan, and he became a sensation from that. So he was a big-time celebrity, someone who teenagers of the time really looked up to. And then there's the mythology around the fact that the 3 main leads died so young. James Dean, as I mentioned, but also Sal Mineo at the age 37. He was knifed in the parking lot of the apartment, knifed to death in a mugging. And then Natalie Wood died under mysterious circumstances in a drowning accident when she was only in her early 40s. Another mythological element of this movie is method acting. This is the age of Brando. Brando's style of acting really dominated young actors in those days, and particularly James Dean, and involving improvisation and very strong emotional outbursts. It's a 50s melodrama, and 50s melodrama is not realism. So we're in a Greek tragic 50s Hollywood melodrama period. And it is a story about juvenile delinquency. But there was an earlier film, and this was juvenile delinquency was much on the minds of Americans in the 1950s, because we were in the midst of a economic boom, post-war economic boom. Things seemed to be great, but underneath the surface, there were things going on, especially with their children. Now, earlier in the same year of 1955, Blackboard Jungle came out, which was a story about juvenile delinquency. But Blackboard Jungle was clearly meant to show the economic conditions of juvenile delinquency. In other words, well, these kids have no money, and they have they feel like they have no future. They become delinquents. Not so here in Rebel Without a Cause. These are middle-class kids. These are kids with everything they want. Jim Stark, the character that James Dean plays, he gets everything he wants. His father gives him everything, but so the kids are not seeing real values in their family, in their parents. Jim's father is henpecked. He has no courage to stand up to his wife. Jim's mother, Natalie Wood's character, the father, is very uncomfortable with the affection he and his daughter, Natalie Wood, Judy in the movie, um, and that you can't, now that she's a teenager, you can't have this similar affection, and Judy is very much disturbed by this. And then with Plato, that's the Mineo character. He comes from a very rich family, but his father is absent and just sends checks. That's his whole relationship with his child. So there is a element of we've been abandoned, even if we have the material blessings of a prosperous society. We perhaps don't have moral values. And where are we as any teenage group? And teenagers, I think the term just comes from the 1940s. Teenagers weren't considered like an important group of society, but they were. And certainly this Rebel Without a Cause really plays into this teenage point of view. This is a film that is made from the teenage point of view. And Rebel has mythical scenes in it, and perhaps the best of them all is the scene at the Griffith Observatory, where the school has a school trip for the juniors and seniors, and they are confronted in the planetarium show with the vastness of the universe and their own insignificance, in which the narrator of this kind of like a doomsday show that ends this planetarium adventure, that the narrator says that human beings are just a episode of little consequence, and the teenagers kind of take that. What is our meaning in life? It really plays into that, and they are all suitably terrified by their own insignificance. And there's the Chicky Run, the famous Chicky Run, and when chicken is the worst epitaph you could place on another human being, and especially Jim Stark, the James Dean character. And it's a very dangerous thing, and the two combatants who are supposedly enemies, when they confront the tragic element, and they sort of are becoming friends, bonding, and Jim Stark asks, well, why are we doing this? And Buzz, the other combatant in this chicken run, says, well, you got to do something. So again, Stuart Stern, the screenwriter of the final version of the screenplay, he, like I say, he's taking very much a teenage point of view, and one of the main criticisms of the film is that the film is basically too harsh on the parents. The parents have just become characters. They're not not that bad of people, but in the teenager eyes, they seem to be. And Jim's father constantly tells him, oh, why are you worried about all this? 10 years you'll look back on this and you'll just laugh. The proverbial line you give to teenagers when they're going through this angst is that, you'll get over this. Just wait 10 years. How are you going to wait 10 years when you're suffering from this feeling of angst? And what Jim looks for is really three main things. He's looking for honor, he's looking for courage, and he's looking for sincerity, none of which he finds in his parents. And in the commentary in the book I'm going to show you in a second, we learned that Stuart Stern himself had a very bad relationship with his parents, so he probably overloads it a bit in his screenplay. But also Nicholas Ray, the director, had a very torturous relationship with his sons. His father as well, James Dean, had a very bad, unusual relationship with his own father. So all this plays into, and torturous is really kind of the adjective you might want to give Rebel Without a Cause. Nicholas Ray's films in general are about torturous relationships that just don't seem to be able to work. And how can you develop such relationships? The film itself, Rebel, Without a Cause sets up an alternate family, the family of James Dean, Natalie Wood, portraying the mother and the father to the child Sal Mineo. Now, I read a book on the making of this film, Live Fast, Die Young, The Wild Ride of Making Rebel Without a Cause. Great cover. Excellent book. It's well-researched. We learn everything about the context of the movie, what happened to the different players in the cast, to Nick Ray. We learned some of the gossip. If you like gossip, there's gossip in here. Well, it's not really gossip because it has been acknowledged that Natalie Wood, this was Natalie Wood's first adult role, and she was desperate to get this part to escape her childhood, escape the childhood nature of how audiences identified with her. Always a very, very difficult thing for child actors. But she and Nicholas Ray really coached her in wardrobe and hairdo and worked constantly with her. And they did, in fact, have an affair. She was 16. He was something like 43, 44 at the time. And they tried to keep it secret. And but Natalie Wood was also having an affair with Dennis Hopper, who plays one of the gang members in this film, simultaneously. So there was tension on the set. Nicholas Ray was working very closely with all his actors, improvising. He was playing at the Chateau Marmont, the famous hotel-like place in LA where John Belushi died. And they would go to his apartment there and would, for months, they would rehearse different scenes, different approaches. Ray was very much willing to let the actors themselves, and especially James Dean, have his way. I think Dennis Hopper says that Dean actually directed the film, and there certainly, and Dean and Nicholas Ray very much did let him do the scenes the way he was most comfortable in doing, because he knew he had a big star here. He was well aware of it. And another thing, if you watch the film, and I never knew this until I read the book, I had seen some documentaries. In fact, there's a documentary in this UHD that I've seen before on the making of the film, and also a documentary on James Dean's life, which I had seen before. But Nicholas Ray, at the end of the film, there's in a long shot you see a man walking up to the Griffith Observatory, and that in fact is Nicholas Ray. He wanted to put his stamp on the film. And so there's also a commentary on this track by Douglas Rothgeb, who also wrote a book on the making of Rebel Without a Cause, and it's very good. And the information, if you read the book, the information that's in the book that I read is very consistent with the info that Douglas Rothgeb gave. Now, I want to talk. I don't usually do this, but I'm just going to talk for about a minute on the quality, the picture quality here. I have untutored eyes, so. But I think most people who watch movies have untutored eyes. But this isn't in Dolby Vision. This is HDR10. And I have a problem with HDR10. I have with my television set over here. I don't know if it's the TV or me, but I consult different recommendations that you can find for my particular television for HDR10 and for Dolby Vision. Dolby Vision is always, I have it set to certain settings, and every movie I watch in Dolby Vision looks beautiful to me. Not so with HDR10, and especially here, because in the beginning of the film it looks so plasticky, and I was on the recommended. I think I went back to the recommended ones, and then I tweaked around with it, but it took me about 20 minutes to get rid of that plastic look that often I find in HDR10. And so then I had it, and it was pretty good. And the colors pop, the blacks have detail, and there's much more precise clarity in the image itself. But then in the last 5 minutes of the movie, suddenly it went back, even though my settings were the same, it went back to looking absolutely plasticky again. So when I watched when I listened to the commentary, I played the Blu-ray because the commentary is on both the 4K and the Blu-ray. And I got to admit, even though the colors don't pop, the clarity's not there in the same depth of resolution that you find on the HDR, the movie looked much more like a film to me than did the HDR10. It looked more filmic. And I've seen Rebel Without a Cause many times, and a couple times in a movie theater. And it just looked, I was much more comfortable watching it. So that is a glitch I found, at least for my TV. And it could just be my TV or my fussiness. I don't know what it is. But nevertheless, the movie itself is just an outstanding film. One, like I said in the beginning of this video, very near and dear to my heart. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who listened. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.